Hello, my name is Lisa Shea, and this series is about horror authors, horror poets, horror stories, and all things horror. So today we're going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, and specifically his poem, The Raven. So Edgar Allan Poe is one of my favorite authors and poets of all time. He was born in January 19th, 1809, and he only lasted until October 7th, 1849. So he had a very rough, short life. And he was born in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts, so I think I have a kinship there. And he didn't live here very long. His father left when he was 1. His mother died when he was 2, and he was an orphan. So he was sent off to live elsewhere. And his foster family never formally adopted him and were sometimes nice, but sometimes really cruel to him. So he ended up moving all over the place. So he was sort of adrift in the wind. He served in the army for a little while. He ended up marrying his cousin in 1836, but then she died of tuberculosis in 1847, and he himself died 2 years later from alcoholism and substance abuse. So he had a very rough life. His time with his cousin was a very happy time. He loved her immensely, but she ended up getting sick with tuberculosis and then dying slowly, spitting up blood and so on. So he became even worse of an alcoholic, watching his beloved wife slowly dissolve with this disease and end up dying. So during that time period, when his wife was very sick and was dying, this is when he wrote The Raven. And The Raven was an instant success. So he got praise for it, and people recognized it, but I think it was probably a small comfort to him when his main concern was that his wife was dying and that he couldn't do anything to help her. And then he just drove himself right into death after that. So a sad story, a very talented person, and it's a shame that his life had all of these really dark aspects to them. But I suppose one could also say that if he hadn't had all these things happen to him, maybe he wouldn't have come out with these super powerful things like The Raven. So it's a trade-off. It would be nice if people could write things like The Raven without experiencing any pain and agony, but maybe it's just part of the human condition that we need these kinds of dark things to happen to us to be able to tap into this section of our soul. So we will read The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken sad and certain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now to still the beating of my heart I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more." Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhere louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then where thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven, of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door. perched above a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my said fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird upon his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will live me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er, she shall pass, ah, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tuffled floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God has lent thee, by these angels he had sent thee, respite, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate, yet all undaunted on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still of bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell the soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, who the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. So, quite a powerful poem of a man who desperately misses his lost love and hopes that he has a sign that he will rejoin with her again at some point, and got his hopes dashed that he is just without her forever. So one can imagine Edgar Allan Poe feeling the same way as he's watching his beloved wife fall deeper and deeper into sickness. So I hope you enjoyed my reading of this. Be sure to add comments or questions about it. Let me know what other poems I should read. and I will talk with you guys soon. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.